Welcome to another episode of Marry Your Future. I am so excited you guys are here. And if you don't know, we have transitioned to doing video. So you can check us out on YouTube and see the video. Those will go up every Thursday, just like the podcast go to your streaming platforms. So this time we are talking about how faith requires flexibility. And the Lord woke me up and he was just showing me almost like a reel of my life over the past year and how I've become a lot more flexible with the Lord. And it was almost like he was just like, I'm proud of you. Like, faith requires flexibility. And I've been in the position where have I've been able to see others who are struggling in that area, when others who are so used to being in a box that anything that is outside of that box, anything that looks like it's unstructured, gives them anxiety, and it puts them in a frenzy. It just disrupts their day and their peace. And I've learned that everything that's uncomfortable, everything that's difficult, everything that is a challenge is not from the devil. It's not. And so I told you guys a couple of episodes ago, the biggest thing I've learned is to ask, is this God? Is this me? Or is this the devil? Because going into my wilderness season, religion would have you think that is nothing but the devil. And it was all God. Going into a place where I was stripped of everything. I was stripped of my resources that I was used to. I was stripped of having my family close and being my support. I was stripped of a lot of friendships. I was stripped of everything pretty much. But I knew that the place that I was in, God had called me to be there. And so for a while I was asking myself, am I in the right place? I know I heard you, God. I know you said move here. I know you called me out for a time like this, but it's lonely. It's frustrating. I'm literally living by faith. And he said, that's what I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you how to live by faith. And faith requires flexibility. Oh. Well, faith also requires trust. You know, when God called Abram and told him to get from his family's house and to go to a land that he would show him, he didn't give him clear-cut directions. Most of us won't leave until we know where we going, how we getting there, how much is it going to cost to travel there, where we going to stay when we get there, where we going to work. No. Faith requires flexibility. It's not comfortable. It is not. But I will tell you, as you stay in the course of living by faith, it becomes peaceful. I don't need to know what tomorrow looks like. Now, the awesome thing is, I am connected to the God who knows all, so I can call upon him. I can ask him, okay, Lord, what's tomorrow look like? I'm a friend of God, so we can spend time and he'll show me things and he'll reveal things to me. But I don't need to know. Why? Because faith requires flexibility. If you are one of those people that need everything to be proper and in a box, and you need it to be perfect, and you need to know where you're going and how you're getting there, and you need to know every single detail, it is going to be a struggle for you. Why? Because faith requires flexibility. Faith requires trust. You want to get to the future that God has for you, he's not going to show you the journey every turn by turn. No. Absolutely not. Why? Because faith requires flexibility. I literally am a completely different woman from a year ago. And it's crazy. It is so crazy. We're coming up. It's the end of the year, to look back and just to see how much God has developed me by separating me and by having me in this place where he's teaching me how to live by faith. He's teaching me how to trust in him. He's teaching me how to get out of the driver's seat. You know, there was an old saying, Jesus, take the wheel. Well, if you have to give him the wheel, that means you've been holding on to it. And so I'm in this place where I'm learning I have to be flexible with my ideas. I have to be flexible with my desires. I have to be flexible with the things that I want. I have to be flexible with my ideas on how is God going to work this thing out. I have to be flexible. I have to trust him. I have to get out of the way because I don't know best. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how to get there. I don't see the full picture. I just see a little small perspective. So faith requires flexibility. And a lot of times when you are so used to being boxed in, when you are so used to being a structured person, some people will describe it as a type 8 personality. When you're so used to that, you won't move where there's uncertainty until you'll get stuck in the same place over and over and over again. It may look different, but it's the same place. And I've learned when God gives me opportunities to walk in faith, when he gives me tests of faith, oh, I'm going full-fledged in. Why? Because I know if I don't pass that test, I'm going to encounter it somewhere going around that same mountain. I'm going to encounter that test. And so you guys know last year I went to Chicago to meet up with my mentor in our community, and it was a one-day trip, and that was a faith journey. I mean, literally getting a ticket to go to Chicago, getting a ticket to come back home from Chicago when all the bills were behind, when that required flexibility. And what do I mean by that? When God told me to go to Chicago, even though every bill in my house was behind, I was like, that don't make sense. That's not wise. And when I even went as far as to cancel and say, hey guys, I'm not going to make it. Every bill in my house is past due. God corrected me. He said, I told you to go. Faith requires flexibility. You're worried about the bills. I got that covered. So I ended up going to Chicago, and everything got worked out. The flight there, the flight back, me getting picked up from the airport. God even took care of the water that I wanted to drink. Everything. But it required flexibility on my part. It required me to get out of the driver's seat. It required me to really throw out my ideas of what wisdom was. And it required me to follow him. That meeting is part of the reason why my life drastically is different. Why I'm confident in the Lord. Why I'm confident in the faith. Why I'm confident following him. He's so good. And as you begin to lean not into your own understanding, as you begin to acknowledge him in all your ways, he will direct your path. But if you have an idea of what that path looks like, when he says, hey, make a left, and you like, that's the long way, I could just make a right, but you don't know that there's an accident that way. It requires flexibility. You cannot be so structured, so boxy, so set in your ways and follow God. Your ways are not my ways. My ways are higher than yours. What you think you know, you don't know. What you think you see, you don't see. Following God requires flexibility. It requires us to really, really seek him. And I want to look up the definition of the word flexibility. Let's look that word up because I keep saying it. So let's look it up. Thank you, Lord. So flexibility is the quality of bending easily without breaking. It's the quality of bending easily without breaking. God is so good. When we get out of our own way, when we get out of our own thoughts and desires of how things should work, when we trust him, when he says go left, we'll go left. It'll be easy. Why? Because I trust him. Because I've done it. And even thinking about how people like gymnasts, how they become flexible. You don't just wake up and boom, you're flexible. No, it's a process. It's repetitive. You're stretching that muscle. So maybe flexibility for you doesn't look like booking a ticket to Chicago for one day and praying that God will get you home. No, maybe flexibility for you looks like God saying, hey, go eat bananas. Like maybe it's just a step of obedience even when you don't understand. You know, there's this guy who he was listening to the Lord and he was driving and God said pull over. And he was on a busy highway and to pull over did not make sense. But because he was flexible, because he wasn't on a time schedule, because he wasn't trying to get to a place, and because he wasn't so set in his structure and set in what he needed to do, when the voice of God came to him, he listened. He heeded the word. He pulled over on a busy highway, even though it didn't make sense. And there was a horse that got loose that was running down the highway. Faith requires, say it with me, flexibility. It is amazing the freedom that you get when you release the reins. I just watched Men of Honor, and I don't know what it's some kind of field work that they were doing with the animal, and they were plowing with the animal, and they had these bruises on their hands. Cuba Gooding Jr., his dad, who played the role, had these scars on his hand, and Robert De Niro, he had the same scars, and it was from them holding onto the reins and pushing and doing the work, toiling. But when we release and when we lean into what our God is doing, when we trust Him, when we trust that He knows best, that He knows all, we can be flexible. So if you're struggling, if you are becoming easily frustrated, if you're becoming easily agitated, if you are at the brink where you're like, forget it, I just want to quit, I want to give up, maybe you're not as flexible as God needs you to be. And maybe the thing that you're fighting against feels like resistance as telling you no, you're doing the wrong thing, but maybe it's resistance saying, hey, you're not fully surrendered. You're trying to drive the car while asking me to drive the car. It doesn't work. Faith requires flexibility. How flexible are you? Can God come in and change your plans? Or will you have a whole hissy fit about it? Will God come in and change and ask you, hey, put that thing down? It reminds me of like the people who they say they give up things for God. And it's really that, one, are you flexible to do that? If He asks you to give away the thing that you hold near and dear, will you? And often I've seen God give it back once their heart is really positioned to know that He's God, that He's the source, that He's the God of their life, not the thing, not the talent, not the money, not the relationship, none of that. And so, how flexible are you? Because faith will require flexibility. Breaking up with your past is going to require you to do something different. It's going to require you to make hard, tough decisions and to stick with those decisions. The more flexible you are in breaking up with your past, the more surrendered you are to God through that process, the faster and easier it is to marry your future. The ball's in your court. He's a gentleman. He'll never force. He doesn't want slaves. He wants children. And children obey. Children don't need to understand why. They just do. They just are children. So, are you flexible or are you resisted? That's the question. Until next time.